Craig Holyfield. I'm going to try not to use this mic if I need it, then please just let me know that you can't hear me. Or if I'm getting faded a little bit as I go, just let me know. So we're going to talk about the weapons detection system that's been installed at the sister property in this one. The system itself is built by a company, SafePointe. It's a company that I founded with a handful of folks. The technology itself goes back to a project we worked for the Department of Defense for Afghanistan. The company did a number of production security programs for the Department of Defense. I came out of the U.S. Army as a soldier. I was an infantry officer initially. I became a bomb tech, ran a bomb squad in the mid-90s. I did a lot of security around counter-explosive devices. I was fortunate enough that the Army sent me off to get a PhD. I worked out of the military laboratories and with the Department of Energy laboratories and with the U.S. intelligence community up until the time I retired, which was 2010, and then I began to do commercial work in the space. The biggest thing we did was fiber optic cable all across Afghanistan. So we installed a standard telecom cable across the country, all the logistics routes around all the bases. Why that's important for this is that in 2014 there was an extension of that program. In the original fiber, what we could see was all acoustic. You could see when somebody was walking, when they were driving, they were stopping, they were digging. So we were focused on the roads, on the counter ID program, counter ID problems, counter explosive device problems, and then for the perimeters, for the bases, we were concentrated on people coming in, entering, and jumping over a fence or trying to dig under. This system, the very sensors that are located here, were an extension of that, where what we were asked is that when somebody crossed an airfield and they were on the concrete apron, where the airplanes would go, as we were sharing the air bases, the question was whether or not the person was armed. And so what they wanted to know, if you could see somebody walk across, was that person armed or not? So we designed a passive sensor, so there's no external emissions on it, so it doesn't radiate in any way. And what we did is we had these long sensor elements that we placed on a cable. We would bore under the airfield underneath the 2 feet of concrete apron, and then we would pull this cable through that had the sensor elements on it in order to determine if somebody was armed. In 2017, we converted that over into this form factor, the one that you see in the picture. So the garbage cans with the holes in them that you have around the property is the form factor that we first chose. These were designed for, this is the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so what it's designed to have free flow of motion, so it's not a standard metal detector. Most people, when they think about this, always think about a standard metal detector. We've all been through them. We've all got stopped and hand-wanded somewhere along the way inside of those. This is not that. So those systems have effectively a radio frequency antenna of some kind. They're emitting and they're receiving, they're looking for some interference based on other metal interfering with what that is. This is looking at the way metal moves through a space, and as it moves through the space, it has a characteristic signature to it. It looks like something when it's in motion. We capture that, and then we use the machine to determine whether or not that's a potential weapon. And then once it determines that there's a potential weapon there, and I'll talk to you more about how it does that, but that it's a potential weapon, then it grabs an image and a short video clip and then hands that over to a human. Human looks at the image and says, what's the threat associated with this? Is this a guy in a yellow jacket who looks like he's someone who works at this facility? Is this somebody who's coming in with a potential concealed carry on them? Or is this someone with an assault rifle that's out? So each of those look different to the machine. But if I had my pistol out and I had my pistol under my coat, there's a lot of difference in intent between those two. In this case, I'm coming in to commit a violent act. In this case, I may just be trying to protect myself, and I'm silly enough to believe that I can do that in a casino and not get called for it. And so, but the difference in how you guys respond to that is the key. For us, what we do is just tell you, hey, somebody just came in pistol out. Somebody just came in with what appears to us to be a concealed carry. This is someone who we believe is a Maricopa County Sheriff's Department who's coming in one of the traffic police. So that's the idea behind it. The systems themselves see 15 feet in all directions. So while this looks like I could just jump around it and go around, I would be seeing from each one of the posts for a pretty wide section. This was installed in the spring of 2019. So this, we're going into our, this will be our we're already in our 4th year of service with these guys. So the problem is the obvious one. I mean, the casino certainly has had, I would guess even in the past year, someone stopped with a potential weapon on them and confronted in some way. You already have a way to do that. You know, someone prompts you, a guest, one of the staff, one of the security guards or security officers determine that, hey, that guy looks like he's armed, and then there's an approach that happens that's inside of that. This is along that way, but just a different set of eyes, really pushed out on the edge, so you'd have a better chance of getting them before they're on your floor or within the facility itself. So the idea is to catch it in motion. So with lots of traffic, there's a couple of things to point out on this. So one, the target in this case, and I'll show you the specific alert that came in. It's the young lady in the hoodie. She's actually the security officer for that site. If you look on her right-hand side, there's a pistol that's there inside of that. The system detected it again, and then in the flow of all that traffic, the system said, hey, I think I see a weapon. There's a human on the other side who looks at that and says, oh, I see it. That looks like one of their security officers who just happens to be cold this morning, and she's wearing a hoodie over her security uniform, and that's who it is. And so then this becomes, in our world, we color code from yellow to red. And so yellow is this is a moderate threat in case this isn't the security officer, we're mistaking her, or that the security officer's been terminated and she's still coming in. We just notify this would be a yellow alert, and I'll show you the other colors. So you can think about the system, and this is really important, especially for your guest. The machine makes the call. So there's not a human who's sitting looking, saying, I don't like guys in ties, I'm gonna push a button every time somebody comes in with a tie and stop the person with a tie. It just can't work that way. The machine has to say, I think I see something that looks like a weapon. When that happens, then it pushes in front of the human looks and then makes a decision on the color code that's associated with that. And so that's the detection is done by the machine, the classification or qualification is done by the human, and then the notification comes to you. And then you get to make the decision on what you do once that comes in. The core underlying, so I mentioned earlier about standard metal detectors and the way this works. And the easiest way to think about it is that if I had a long bar magnet, and it had a plus or minus on the end of it, it was red and green or red and blue, and it's 4 feet long, and I'm going to come walking through the system. The system would see this long magnetic signature that's got a plus and a minus on the end, and it has a shape associated. And it would say that looks like a 4 foot long magnetic object. If I take that same thing and I fold it around, and it's now a big U-shaped, Bugs Bunny style magnet that I'm going to have, when I come walking through it this time, it says that's not a 4 foot long thing, it's a U-shaped thing. And so the difference in those two allows us, it turns out that every metal object has that sort of signature to it when it's in motion. And because of that, we can classify the difference between the smallest of the Glock family and the biggest of the Samsung family. And that was actually the first targets we went after initially, and the ones that we were able to determine. And I already mentioned how it works. The human goes through, the camera captures, or the system makes a determination, it captures the image, it captures the video and sends it to a human, and then we notify you. We notify you on a couple of different ways. So this is a web browser, and I'll show you this. This was that alert with the young lady, the yellow alert that's there. So if I ask you who's closest to the center line of those two posts, you would say it's the lady in the hoodie, and that's who the indication is inside the image. There's an app, and you can receive this by text or email. When you receive it by text or email, it's only the picture that's on the right-hand side of this, from on the left-hand side as you're facing the image. The video is only on the web browser. This is an example of an orange. I'm going to show you these better in the live view. And this is a red. And so I'll take a second on the difference between the three. So yellow is like I described. It'll be Maricopa County. It'll be an individual who came in with a concealed carry. It'll be someone who, if they are a threat, they're a relatively moderate threat that's inside of this. Orange or red is where a human has seen an exposed firearm. It's out, it's drawn, it appears to be an active shooter event that's occurring now, and then everyone should react accordingly. Orange is the point in between, where that's not normal, but we haven't seen, and it's escalated. This could be a mass casualty event, but there hasn't been a weapon physically seen. And one thing to think about that, just because Maricopa County has the weapon on their hip and you can see it, that's not a red, because we don't expect Maricopa County's or the tribal police, we don't expect them to come in on an active shooter. We expect them to do what they do with that weapon all the time. And so it has to be out and drawn and appear to be an attackable. Now this is going to be an active shooter. So that's the difference between the three, and I'll show you in a second. Like I mentioned, the app itself, and I'll pull it up, a live view, or I have an Android emulator on my computer, and so I can show you what it looks like on the phone for your exercise. The systems can see through, so they're, if you remember, I said that we had done this in Afghanistan under 24 inches of steel reinforced concrete. So there's no emission. So a normal metal detector can't work through the wall. A normal metal detector couldn't work through the concrete because it's emitting. And when it emits, all that gets absorbed by the rebar and by the moisture in the concrete and the salts in that, and then can't get back through. So in our case, we're just looking at the magnetic field. That magnetic field is incredibly hard to shield inside of that. So what that means is that we can see it through items as those items are moving through. I'm going to show you a couple of live views. So the first one I'm going to show you, this was the last 24 hours at TSR. And so this guest 2 hours ago, coming in at P2 West, was flat. It's very likely, if you look on that individual's right-hand hip, he's got a pretty good bulge on the back side of that right-hand hip. The system triggered on something. The analyst took a look and said, hey, I think I see enough there that I'm going to flag this to be checked. That may be a great big giant phone that's back there. The system may have false alarmed on that. If we look back over though, what we see is about a 1 in 10,000 on average across the group. So a normal facility like this is going to be something on the order of 10, 20,000 entries and exits, maybe as much as 30,000 entries and exits in a day. And so what you expect is sort of 3 or 4 a day, they get flagged. And then out of that, some number of those will be false alarms. And there's always a chance that systems will false alarm. There's always a chance that we will miss. And so that the system just, for whatever reason, is confused, didn't see the weapon, and didn't flag it. We perform about the same as what a standard magnetometer does, and then in terms of the catch rate, and then again much lower. So all of us have been screened somewhere by a magnetometer that went off on our boots or our shoe, the metal in our shoelaces, that sort of thing. So these are the ones that happened last night across. A little more active this morning than normal. That employee got flagged this morning. The system saw something, and his behavior was going to be unusual enough that it was flagged. He could just be late for work trying to get tagged in. And you can see that this is what a fairly normal day looks like across the systems. And then this is what a day looks like when things are going So, that's a shotgun in the hand of that. That was a warehouse facility who was red teaming us to see if we were going to catch it when it came through. And if you look at that, the human takes about 2 to 4 seconds on it. In total, it takes us about 6 to 10 seconds. To put that in perspective, the human walking gait is about 1 meter per second, or about 3 feet per second. So we kept somewhere about 18 to 30 feet away from the pair. And so at the entrance that I was just at this morning with the coffee shop there, we catch about the time they hit the doors, or perhaps a couple of steps just inside the doorway, that would get flagged. It comes up then on your phone, it goes up to this display, and it gets notified inside of there. So this is obviously a red alert. I'll take a quick step back. And this is one that would be orange. And so in this case, that same group was red teaming us, and they brought that box through. One thing you'll notice is that he's walking on the outside of that pair because the system sees, again, 15 feet in all directions. So even if, I think the one at the coffee shop may go over, not quite to the wall, but you'd still expect if they tried to skirt around that we would pick it up and flag it. So in this case, the shotgun's in that small box. Not a positive weapon has not been positively seen, so therefore it's on. Let me pause real quick and see if there are any questions on what I've covered so far on the systems, or how they work, or how they're operating.
If someone comes in with multiple firearms,
Yes.
they're all concealed, would that?
It would, yeah.
would
Yeah.
that-
We did what we referred to. Yeah, I'm sorry?
Sorry, would that show up as orange because of the amount, or would it escalate further?
If it was just like 2 concealed carries, one on the hip, one on the leg, it would still be yellow in that case. We did what we called the Neo problem from the Matrix movies, where they've got it in the big suitcase, and we would load the suit, the big bags up and come through, and those will be orange at that point. And you'll get some false alarm based on that. So if somebody comes through with a huge, cases of soda or alcohol and stack and come rolling through, there's some chance that would see effectively the Neo problem, where there's just this big mass associated with that, and then flat. Other questions?
What about the weather conditions? Should it affect it?
No, sir, not at all. So we've done everything from extreme cold. I've had it, again, we designed for Afghanistan, and we buried, and then we've had it in extreme heat for years. So it shouldn't, we have never seen a problem with any of the weather conditions. And it's waterproofed with Princess IP67, which has meant that it can sit there like with a sprinkler on it all the time, and it would never affect.
So the 3 colors are red.
Sorry?
What were the colors again?
Yellow, orange, and red. So red is where it's an active shooter. Yellow is where it's a standard concealed carry. Orange is where if it is a problem, it's a much bigger problem, but we haven't seen a weapon out yet. At one of the casinos in Southern California, they've had something on the order of 2 to 3 oranges a year. And in every case of those, it's been at their employee entrance, where one of the tribal police are coming in plain clothes, but with like a tactical vest and a bag coming in, and it's not easy to possibly identify, and those have been orange alerts. That's what it is. Yes, sir.
So, the color, saying active shooter, when I use active shooter, to me that's somebody shooting.
That's fair.
So all you're saying is your analyst they're making their educated decision on what the intent is, which is kind of gonna be hard when you're not here, so.
Yeah. I guess it's better said, it's a high probability of an active shooter. This appears like it's going to be an active shooter now.
Yeah, because if you say red and we say, well, there's active shooter, that's what's gonna go around, I mean,
It's
we
fair.
have to internally have to decide what we're
It's
gonna
fair.
say.
Yeah. Because there is a chance of false alarm on it. I described one yesterday to the group, and that had been a young man who came through, cell phone in his hand. He had it cupped like a firearm. He was leaving the facility. It was a warehouse facility on a Friday afternoon. He was joking around with his buddy and came running through like this, and the system for whatever reason had caught it. The human looked at it and said, "Damn, that looks like a handgun in that guy's hand right now."
And then again, the only difference between red and orange is red, they see it, orange, they don't.
Correct. With orange, it looks like it's probably going to be something like a bigger bag that's associated with it, or a big coat, something that makes this look a bulge, and especially like if you got a big bulge in a coat where it would look like it's an assault rifle or a shotgun underneath the coat that we've caught several times in different teaming events, red teaming.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, that would be like the pressure cooker in the bag.
Correct.
That would be the control system, so it was like an IED.
Correct. Depending on the size of what it is, again, the analyst is looking at the image and making a determination of what's a threat, and just trying to help you, because we know there's a lot of noise that's happening, there's a lot of things going on, and what we're trying to do is just change how you look at it. And so, yellows are gonna come in, everybody's gonna pay attention to yellows for the first 3 or 4 days, and then only people who are having to respond are gonna pay attention to yellows after that. And I'm gonna get calls that executives don't want yellows on their phone anymore because there's just too many of them. Even with 3 or 4, if you're having to stop and check, depending on who it is, and which properties and so on. But at the same time, they wanna see if there's an orange, they wanna see if there's a red. So we do that then by text and email is the easy way that we get that from.
Have we had an orange alert at yet?
As I wouldn't expect, if we get more than a couple a year, I'd be really surprised. The risk there is the golf bags right now, and I told you that we're working to ensure that comes down. But for the most part, the guys would not, even though it's a bigger bag, they would still say, hey, that looks more like a golf bag than it does a weapons bag to me. And most of the time, I'll say that we did an airline, and that's one where we were more likely to get weapons bags being checked, and guys coming through with weapons bags, and we got the most oranges there, and then red team events. So it's just not that common. Yellow is the common piece. I think the good news, so the bad news for another facility is they've got, they do about 400 alerts a day, and it's their own folks, because they have that many armed officers on their property coming through, and they're just hitting it constantly. And for us, it's a weapon, and I can't tell you if that's Maricopa County, the tribal police, or just someone who's trying to make you think that they're Maricopa County or the tribal police. And so we throw the flag, and it gets in there, but that creates a lot more noise than on the system as a whole. There was a question earlier, I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna ask if the gun when it's broken down.
It doesn't matter. So we actually did a lot to train. So we've trained these systems at what these shapes look like. And so we would disassemble the weapons and bring them through parts and pieces and look at it from that perspective. So it's a great one.
So the monitor system, when it connects with the camera in our dispatch office, it'll have the frame to what color it possibly is?
Correct. It's this display. So this is what they'll have. And then this is the one we provide. So we do this one, and then, oh, I apologize. Apparently I have a meeting, that's what's recommendation. Everybody chooses to see.
Put it in the air.
Yeah. Actually, no. It's office over. Okay, so this is what the mobile device looks like when you go into it. So I'll show you how to log in and everything. I actually know mine, I'll just do it right now. So when you, the app itself is located on Android and on the Android and iOS store. When you first come to it, it pops up in that screen. It's at the top. There's a login settings button on it. You click the login settings button, and that takes you over to another screen. Out of we work incredibly hard to simplify. And the shape of the thing, the way it works, the color codes. This product came underneath a legacy system that we had for supporting school districts. And so because of that, you have to select which server that you have. The default is an education server. And so you have to select server. From there, you pick the TM2 production server that you see. So that's the targeted magnetic moment, which is the technology that's there. Once you pick that, you select save settings. That'll provide a little pop-up that says that, and you just go back to the login. You enter your credentials, and then once you enter your credentials, you can go to the messages. Once you go to the messages, there's a series of channels. Channels are basically where the systems are themselves, which entries. I'll show you again live. Once it comes up, then it's just the display of what that is. On your phone, once you're logged in, it comes up just like a text message or email. It'll pop up at the top. You select it, and it goes straight to that message, the newest one that's there. So that's what it looks like, and I'll hand these guides to your folks, and then that'll go out as you choose. This is the emulator running the one from Poppy Stick. I left these three, so that's the new ones are the ones with a little orange dot there because they're actually a yellow dot on the screen. And so that dot indicates that you have an alert there that you haven't checked yet. And I purposely left these on the machine. And so then we go to P1 parking. Once we go to P1 parking, then we can select this one. And that's the individual who had come up in that alert. So that's what it would look like on your phone when you when it popped up to you. And then you would know that that's the person at P1 parking. You should never get a blank one. If you do, it's on the moving video on the live display. We're working really hard to get the timing right on all of these to make sure that the images are good. The analyst has some ability to adjust that and try to help you frame it inside of that. If they happen to miss it, then you could get a blank image, and I'll just apologize now because you'll have to call somebody on the web display to say who's. Yes, sir.
On the app, do you have the ability to go between each property or is it separate?
It depends on the login, so those credentials have the different entries that are associated with it, and it can be both properties. It could just be a single entryway. It could be, the hotel and not the casino. It depends on how the security office sets it up here. Yes, ma'am.
Next question. So, if somebody comes in with a weapon in a metal case, will that show up?
It would.
And then my other question would be like, say if someone comes in with would it pop up right and say if someone comes in with like a hammer or like a club, like just coming in some way, like different weapon besides what we would do that?
So a tire tool or a big crowbar,
Yeah,
they're going to smash and grab kind of thing. So it depends. What I'll say, we train the system to see certain items. We focus a lot on the handguns. We do knives down to 4 inches. We do a number of explosive components. So we don't do the explosive themselves. We do either like a pressure cooker or the pipe bomb or the filler that goes with that is what we typically do with these. So if it looks enough like an item, we would characterize it. And then if there are specific items, we can train the system to recognize on those items. But there's the stronger probability is that it would not be identified unless it had a shape. And we've done things to try to eliminate like hand drills and things like that are common to be carried by maintenance to eliminate all the false alarms. But we can still catch that stuff. EMTs, I mentioned it yesterday. EMTs are one of the ones that get flagged more than most, just because they have a number of things. They tend to flag, and then what happens is that the analyst looks and says, "Oh, that looks like a police officer of some kind. I'll go ahead and flag that as yellow," and then the EMT gets stopped. And it's frustrating. And if it's flagged to us, then we start to identify and let the team know, and then let the system know that you're false alarming on this individual, and they'll train to do that. Tim?
I don't know if I missed this, but does the system tell us what it thinks the object is? No?
just yellow, orange, or red, and it's meant to. The system knows what it thinks it is. This is this is an assault rifle. This is a shotgun. This is a handgun. But we don't push that. In that it's meant to be extremely simple. It's all happening in seconds to get it across, and rather than checking all of that stuff in the background. It's just there. Yes.
When you say analyst, does that person work for you, or are you saying like we're watching?
It works for me. So their sole job in life. They're not a video analyst. Their sole job is that this system says I think there's a weapon. They're looking like I showed you the bulk on that one guy coming through on the back side is likely to take. That's what they look for. So they're trained. They don't care about slip and fall. They don't care about pilferage. All they care about is that where's the weapon and what's the level of threat associated with that. And that's they don't see they don't see one image all the time. They see different properties, different images coming into them, and they're just characterizing those different images as they come in. And they do that 24/7. We have a site in South Africa. We've got stuff in Chile. We've got stuff on the West Coast here. We do a lot in the Southeast, and they're just watching those properties. Again, as the image comes up, we do it's hospitals and warehouses, and in casinos are our three biggest. We're doing some office space. We're in New York right now at one of the larger office spaces, and trying to determine if we're going to go across the U.S. in there. So
Are there other
we've done some
casinos?
schools. I'm sorry.
Are the other casinos? Are the other?
We do. And we've been on those now for about a year and a half on a good sort of, it's the biggest amount of traffic that we have is one out of Southern California. Other questions? Well, great. If there are questions, so support at SafePointe. It's got an E on it, so SafePointe.com. So anytime you've got a technical question or you've seen a problem in the system, email support at SafePointe, and it'll come to a bunch of us. And there's a shift supervisor who will respond to that right away. You'll almost think that it's an auto reply. By the way, it comes back to you and it says this has been received, and somebody's going to get to it, depending on what it is. If it's something they can handle, they do it right away. A lot of times it goes to, it'll be I can't log in. It's a login issue, and so it'll go to IT or someone who will handle that. And that shift supervisor is sitting there just like here. We run. I know most of you are coming off shift on the day, and it's the same. We run the same. Other questions?
Just want to add to our friends and partners in surveillance and CRA, your peer in talks with leadership to get a monitor in your office area so you'll be able to see what's going on.
And at the other casino, it works really well with surveillance helping to, that this individual is now at this location and to assist with what's going on inside of that. And it works, it's a nice handoff between the two. Security's had it from the beginning and they know it's there, and surveillance can help cue them into where they are on the floor. Because we talk about 6 to 10 seconds to get to it, but then your officer's somewhere on the in the facility. They're probably seconds away, but that's more time that the person has gone left or right, a couple of different turns, and you're having to track them down inside the facility. Okay, thanks so much. I do appreciate it. I've said it too, and I mean it sincerely. We do this. We did the stuff for Afghanistan. We were really proud of the work we were doing to help the soldiers there. The guys had been monitoring and reporting out on what had been happening. We see this as an extension of that, where folks can go about their lives normally and do all the things we do, but we can improve the security without a huge increase in cost to the facilities or a huge increase in cost to the public having to stand outside and wait as they're wanting to get in to do the things they're wanting to do or to go to their jobs. But none of that matters without you guys. I mean, that's you have the much more challenging task of walking up to someone and having a conversation about them or having to respond in an incident. And we sincerely appreciate everything that you guys do to keep the public safe and to allow them to do what they do. And I do thank you. If there's anything at all we can do, please let us know. Thank you.
make the